Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Can we be rude about publishers now? Is this what this part of the session is for? Right, I'm afraid I'm not a Britney Spears fan, so I'm just going to be stood here and doing my speech. My name is David Renfree. I'm from Universitiy College Birmingham, and I'm the systems librarian there. And I was asked to give this presentation a couple of months ago when Sally came and visited us. And so I decided to talk about online reading lists because I thought that was like the biggest change to our working practices over the last 3 or 4 years. And then I was pleased to hear Heather mention this morning how important online resource lists are now. So I thought, okay, I've chosen pretty well. So it's only a 15-minute talk. It's very much a sort of whistle-stop tour of this is where we were with reading lists, this is where we currently are, this is where we think we're going. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward, I think. So what have we got? A little bit of context. So as I said, I'm from Universitiy College Birmingham, and we often seem to fly under the radar in that no one really knows who we are. Birmingham now has 5 universities, so most people know Birmingham Uni, they know Aston University, they know Birmingham City University, and then there's institutions like ourselves and Newman, who became universities in 2012. There's a bit of information about us there on the slide. The main thing to take away from it really is that we are primarily a teaching institution with undergraduate programs. So we do have a handful of master's students, but essentially we're teaching. So that means the reading list is doubly important because we keep hearing about how students are consumers now. They expect the reading list telling them what to read, and they expect us to have those things in stock. The slide also mentions that we teach about 800 modules a year. So if you just do the maths a moment, that's 800 modules times the number of students who are taking each module. If we did old-fashioned reading lists and printed them out, that's an awful lot of paper. And that's what we used to do until not so many years ago. And so we decided, okay, well, we need to think about modernizing this. Can we do online reading lists? And this was our first attempt. Okay, that's come out quite well. We use the Horizon library system, and we came up with a free online reading list system. So it was really straightforward. If we've got any cataloguing experts in the room, you'll know that the 449 field in Mark is the bestseller tag. And so all we did was we took the title of a reading list, we dropped that into the 449 tag, then we dropped it into all the other books that needed to go on that list, and voila, you have an online reading list. It's fine up to a point, though. It works. It tells students what books they should be reading, but there's quite a few drawbacks with it. So we can't put websites on here unless we catalogue them, and I can't imagine there's a lot of appetite among many of you to be cataloguing websites on a regular basis. We can't link to journal articles if we do it this way. Because it's an old system, it had an awful habit now and again of just rearranging the order in which we'd put those books onto the list. So if a lecturer wanted a particular title at the top of the list, we couldn't guarantee that was going to be there. We could only get 10 items per page, and then the student had to go to the next page. So it works, but there's an awful lot of drawbacks with this. So we wanted something that was a bit more modern. Where did we get these reading lists from? We have documents called module delivery schemes, which are given to every student when they start a module. And I imagine you've all got similar things in your institution. So basically, it tells the student, this is what the module is about, this is how it will be assessed, here are the graduate attributes and all that sort of thing. And then if they carry on down, they get to the bit which the library is interested in. So the module delivery scheme has a week-by-week breakdown saying in week 1 you will study this topic and here is your reading. In week 2 you will study this topic, here is your reading, and so on and so forth. Again, we've got a few problems here. Lecturers were supposed to give these to us over the summer. You know where I'm going with this, don't you? So a student comes into the library in September waving their MDS and says, I want to get hold of these books. My lecturer says I need to read them. Well, first of all, we may not have received the MDS at all. If we did receive the MDS, there's not always a guarantee that it would actually match the one they'd sent us 3 months ago. Perhaps they've changed their mind and they haven't bothered to tell us. So they often didn't match. We would have, sometimes we would have books on the reading list which we simply didn't have in stock at all. So you've got a module with 150 students. They've all been told to read this management book, and the library hasn't got any. Now, I know from your laughter earlier, you know that's not strictly the library's fault, but you try telling that to the student on week 1 of his course when his lecturers told him the books will be in the library. And again, we've got this problem of journal articles, websites, which they would put on there and we can't easily link to. So really we've got 2 main problems here. There's a disconnect between what they've been told to read and what we've actually got in stock. And there's this problem of how do we link easily to all the online material we've got. So it was early 2013, I believe, and we decided we need to do something about this. This has been going on for several years now. We really need to sort of tighten these problems we've got going on. And so we did a little bit of research and we said, okay, what products are out there? We invited some people in to give us some demonstrations. I say some people. In early 2013, there were really only 2 systems to choose from. There was Talis Aspire and there was Rebus List. If you are going through this process yourselves now, I believe Cersei Dynix and EBSCO both have products in the pipeline. But at the time, it was a choice between the 2 of them. And so we just said to ourselves, okay, let's do a bit of evaluation. What sort of things do we need to consider? So how much time is it going to take us to, do all the administration work with the system? We're a small team at UCB. We don't have the luxury of teams of library assistants to do this stuff. How easy is it to use? It needs to be something we can pick up and just run with very quickly. How does it integrate with our existing systems? And I've put authentication on the slide there because authentication seems to be one of those headaches that never quite goes away. And so, are we sure that once we've embedded stuff in here, it's going to work, whether they're in college, whether they're at home or whatever? We were interested in the support from the provider. This got touched on again this morning in 1 or 2 talks, and I always find this quite interesting, that people are sort of often sold on a product, but, you use a product week in, week out, 2 or 3 years at a time. Do you actually get any feedback once you've actually purchased the thing? I say this because I've had bad experiences with 1 or 2 companies. So if we have a problem with the system and we raise an issue, do we get a quick reply? Or do I send it to an online help desk and then I wait for somebody in America to wake up and actually have a look at the problem I'm having? So that was quite key to us. And of course, we had to look at the costing. As we've all learned lately, there's no such thing as a magic money tree. So we had to find something that was well within our budget. And at the end of this process, we chose Talis Aspire. And then it was the usual project management stuff. So we had to go along to committees of senior managers and say, this is what we want to do. This is why we think it's important. Will you give us some money, please? They said, yes, we will. But we want this up and running quickly. So there was a tight time frame for turning this around. We needed to speak to the IT staff because obviously they've got their own projects running. They need to factor in time to look at how they can integrate the new system with what we've already got. On a simple level, I'm ashamed to say that until 2013, although we had our ebooks on the library catalogue, we didn't actually have the URLs in there. And any of you who have used Talis Aspire, you'll know that you need the URL in the 856 field, otherwise the linking to ebooks doesn't work. So that was something we had to get done. And then, of course, once you've bought a system and you've implemented it, you then have to tell everyone about it. So we had a program of going out of speaking to lecturers, saying, this is what we've done, we'd like you to get involved with it. We have standalone PCs in the library. We wanted those set up so that they would have the reading lists on them. And, of course, we had to go and tell students, and certainly returning students, and say, you've now got this new system, this is how it works, here's how to access it, please use it. And so we moved on to Reading List 2.0. And this is what the lists looked like when they came over. So what we did as a one-off with Talis, because we had these existing lists in our system, we didn't want to recreate them from scratch. So we spoke to Talis and said, is it possible to do an import from what we've got already and get it immediately into your system? And then some clever people did something with some code, and that was what we got. It's better. It's not perfect by any means. I mean, I think it looks a little bit nicer than the old system. There are buttons, not many on this one, which will give you a link straight through to the ebook. So we've got something here to work with. And so that first 12 months, it was really more of a soft launch. While we just started tidying these lists up and saying, okay, let's get some journal articles in there, let's get some websites, let's learn how the reports work, and just familiarizing ourselves with it. One crucial thing we did learn during this period, though, there's a button up there that says dashboard, the little green mark, if you can't see it very well. And what the dashboard button does is show you how people are engaging with the list. Now, we have a lot of reading lists, and again, I'm sure all of you guys do, where there might be 70, 75 items. It's like the lecturer's life work, you know, everything they know about this topic. And what we quickly found was, the book at the top of the list might have 50 clicks, and the second one has 40, the third one has 25, the fourth has 10, and by the time you get to about 10 books down the list, no one's looking at it anymore. And so you have to go back to the lecturer and go, I really hate to tell you this, but all that effort you've put into that, it's not going anywhere. So that was where we got to. And then we moved things on a little bit. There was a lecturer in the education school who came to see me, and he'd sort of identified a lot of these problems himself. And he said, well, can we structure this a bit better? Can we guide students so that, you know, it's more of an interactive thing? And I said, okay, what have you got? So he brought me his module delivery scheme, the MDS, and basically I started recreating it in this system. And so what we've now got, we've got weekly headings. Week 1, you will study this topic. Week 2, you will study this topic. We've started, he was also very sensible. He specified no more than 2 books per week. You know, so we're just keeping it nice and simple. It's not going to make a student run anywhere. He deliberately started dropping more books in that we knew we had available as an ebook, so it's a more interactive system, and we've started adding annotations and saying, please read chapter 3, please read chapter 7. We promoted this heavily to the students, so this was like the first list that we really got take-off under this system. And it was popular, we got good feedback, and the crucial thing was, when we now looked at the dashboard, we found that as we were going down the list, it was holding up better. So they were getting to week 7, week 8, week 9, and they were still reading. I won't lie to you, by the time they got to week 12, most of them had drifted off. But for the main, it held up pretty well. So I went to an internal event where we sort of share good practice amongst ourselves. And I got lucky because we had a senior manager at that event. And so I said, this is what we've done, this is what we've found, this is why we think it works. And she just said, well, all lists should follow this format. And this is one of the joys of working in a small institution, is that you can have a change like that happen very quickly. So she went off to a meeting with some other senior people, and 2 weeks later, back came the order, from the next academic year, all lists have to follow this format. But then they did something which was beyond our wildest dreams, really. It was even better, because what they said was, well, you're recreating the MDS. Now, at the moment, all students get given a paper MDS. Wouldn't it be better if they just lived online and we didn't have to bother with the paper version at all? And at this point, we've hit the jackpot, because now the lecturers, they have to submit an MDS as part of quality control for every module. So they have to engage with this system. So whenever they make a change to the reading list, any sort of edit or whatever, they have to send it for review. And that means when they make those changes that we previously didn't get to hear about, we now know about them straight away. And so what we've now got, reading list 2.2, so there's the name of the module at the top, the lecturer, there's a few sections here, the module rationale, the learning outcomes, teaching and learning methods. And then I chose this one deliberately because this particular lecture has really sort of grasped the idea of what an online reading list is for. So we've got the weeks, the headings, and this particular screenshot, there's an ebook on there, there's a link to a web page, there's a link to a print library book, there's a link to an online report, there's a link to a journal article. And so what we've now got is something that is truly interactive, using, I think, the product to its best of its abilities. So what's happening now at UCB? At the moment, the lecturers are doing their marking. They're disappearing on holiday in 2 or 3 weeks, but before they do that, they have a deadline to submit their online MDS, which means that we've got the whole of the summer to go through it, identify books that we need, or if we need to order additional stock. And so we've closed that loop. We now know what's going on, and hopefully, you know, they're now getting the idea it's not just about books anymore. You can link to other stuff as well. And that's where we're at right now. The future, I think we're going to keep evolving. This is a screenshot from the new user interface, which I believe is just being used with a handful of institutions in beta at the moment. Is that right? Sorry, we've got someone from Talis here in the front row. We are going to be using this from next month, and so we think there's a few advantages to this. We've got book jackets in there now. That was something lecturers asked for from day one, and so now finally we're meeting that need for them. Now, if you want to see whether an item is available or not, previously you had to click out into another screen. Now it will fold out within the screen, so they never need to leave the list at all, which I think is a big improvement. I'm also told the new design is much more responsive to mobile devices. I haven't had experience of that yet, but I heard a lot of good things about it at the recent Talis conference, so I'm hopeful. We're also looking at getting offline files into reading lists. So at the moment, they just link to online things. Talis have also developed something called the player. So what it means is if you've got a lecturer who's got PowerPoint slides or anything else that currently isn't online, you can embed them within the list. I'm currently looking for volunteers within my institution to sort of take the plunge with me on that one, so I'm hopeful. And finally, UCB is also getting a new VLE next month. We previously used Blackboard, we're now switching to Canvas. And one of the nice features between Canvas and Talis is that there's a plugin you can use, which means you can embed just individual sections of the list. So that bit I showed you a moment ago when I said week 2, week 3, you could just show students week 2 or week 3 or week 4. So they don't scroll down the whole thing and run for the hills. They see something more manageable, and I'm hopeful that's going to be a big improvement for us. I did say it was quick. So that was just a very quick overview of where we've come from, where we are, where we think we're going. There's a lot of things I haven't talked about. The reports on Aspire are very good. We're currently using those to sort of drive our ebook acquisitions. So occasionally Dawson's will send us a list of titles we've had in the past in print. Now they're available online. And so we will sort of crunch those against the reports we can run in Aspire and say, okay, these are the titles we need to target. I haven't talked about the changes to workflows. I haven't talked about the analytics and how you can, discover how students are engaging with the lists. So there is a lot which I could cover if you wanted to get in touch with myself. So my email address is there on the screen, or we've got Paul from Talis here in the front row with his hand up if you wanted to speak to him later. Do we have time for any questions? Or?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Hi, how's it going? So, from what I understand, you asked the lecturers and tutors to put their material that they want directly into Talis.
Yeah.
Do they just type in the name of the book that they are thinking of, and then from there, library staff discover whether it's available online or in print?
That's a very good question. So you're not used to Aspire before? Okay, so it works as a bookmarking tool. So they search for the book they want in our library catalogue. They click on a little button on their browser to drag it into their bookmarks, and they build a list from that. Theoretically, lecturers are supposed to do this themselves, because the idea was you already do this in a Word document on an MDS. It's not really much harder to do it this way. You're just... Yeah. 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 Or if we don't have it in stock, they can find it on Amazon, bookmark it from there. When they send the list for review, we see it and we know how to order it. In theory, the lecturers are doing this themselves. In practice, there's quite a lot of hand-holding goes on from the library staff with... I'm sure you've got this at your institution. There are lecturers who get it, who run with it, they're fine. We have no issues with those. And then there are others who are less keen, and I have a colleague called Sarah. Sarah was appointed to the library shortly before we got Talis. She was just going to be a library services assistant. Sarah is now unofficially the Talis guru, and she's an absolute star. And basically, any time we have something like that, a lecturer going, I don't know what to do, we dispatch Sarah to their office. And she sort of sits down with them, and it gets done quite quickly. So this is what I said. I haven't talked about workflows. There is quite a lot of administration from our point of view involved with Talis. We think it's worth it, but it's something that you need to factor in if you're looking at getting the system. Okay? Yep.
So that bookmarking with Talis there about bookmarking tool recognizes 230 different modes also, so that goes from bookmarking the whole
I won't lie to you, there are one or two lecturers who just send us a Word document and go, can you create my list, please? It happens.
That's what we're
But-
working with.
Yeah, okay.
One more question? Victor, lady over here.
You answered mine as well, because we've got the same problem but with a different product, and just can't get them to engage to do it.
Okay,
Okay.
marvellous, thank you very much.